Welcome to the Open to Hope Show in partnership with the Compassionate Friends. I'm your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, with my co-host and mom, Dr. Gloria Horsley. Welcome to the show, Mom.
Hi, Heidi. It's great to be on with you today. You want to introduce our guest today, Heidi?
Sure, I'd love to, Mom. And as you said, we'll be talking with Dr. Patrick Arbore today on helping families deal with loss. Dr. Patrick Arbore is the founder and director of the Center for Elderly Suicide Prevention and Grief-Related Services, a program of the Institute on Aging in San Francisco, California. He is the author of numerous articles and book chapters on a variety of aging-related topics. In January of 2015, he was a silver medalist for public service sponsored by the Jefferson Award Regional Committee. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
It's great to have you on, Patrick. We make such a fuss about younger people who die by suicide, but actually, isn't it men over 50 or 60? Isn't that the highest suicide rate? Am I correct?
That is correct. That older adults have one of the highest rates of suicide of any age population. We live in a death-denying culture and an ageist culture where we are much more interested in younger people and younger people issues, which I think are important, but not to the exclusion of older adults and the stressors that they experience as they age.
And especially we're living longer now, so we're going to have more of us.
Well, that's one of the things. The fastest growing age category in America today is the 85-plus age category. And while I think people in general think, oh, this is great, we're going to live a nice, long life, but we forget to take into consideration that we might be living life longer with, numerous chronic diseases.
How did you get in the field of working with the elderly?
Well, the significant thing that happened to me was that back in the late 60s, I found an older person who had died by suicide. And I was very, I was young and I didn't know what to do, and it was very difficult. And I had tried to find a grief support group here in the city and county of San Francisco, and there were widower support groups, but no groups that really met the kind of trauma that I had experienced. And I had said to myself that if I could, make any contribution, that I wanted to do something in that area to help prevent older suicides due to emotional issues, and also to provide a source of support for those who are bereaved. What I see all the time over these 40 years that I've been doing this work is that people are very, very resilient, even under a great deal of duress. The loneliness that so many older people experience really shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
And we really need to be aware of the older people in our lives and not slowly and kind of systematically retreat from them because they're older. And I think we have to put more awareness into it and connect. I believe that connections are what bind us to life. And if we can connect with the older people in our families or the older person down the street or who lives next door, I just think minimal outreach can have maximum results when it comes to older people feeling that they are visible, that someone sees them. They don't need 25, best friends. What they need is one or two people that can reach out to them. We do that through our outreach program, where we'll call out to people, older people, once a day if they are in need of that. And those calls are very powerful in terms of decreasing an older person's feeling of loneliness or depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one call once a day. So you can imagine if you have, 4 or 5 people who really care about that older adult, that's going to have a very positive impact on them. I think adult children believe that they can really do everything. They can raise their kids, go to work, take care of their own relationship, and take care of mom and or dad, or sometimes both. And it is really exhausting. I see this all the time with grievers who are adult children of older people who have died. And they'll say that, they did everything they could, and what they wound up being was burned out and suffering from compassion fatigue, which is the high cost of caring. And it's even in the death of their older parent, they're still dealing with that guilt because they so have to work through that idea that I had to do everything for them. And I try to say to families when I give talks is, we can't do everything for our older parent. And that's why I think it's so urgent to be aware of aging services, in the towns or cities in which people live or in the communities. Because I think, trying to help our older adults live, a life of well-being even until the end really does require the support and involvement of other agencies. And that's why we call out to people who are older, because we want to let the adult children know that there are other people who can, talk to your older parent. And I think it really does support the, adult children, but it gives that older parent other people with whom to connect. And I think that's a good thing.
What do you do if you've got these people who don't want to go anywhere, or have and some of them have hearing problems? So
Oh, yeah.
they don't want to go. I don't go. Don't want to go because I can't hear, and I can still drive, and I don't need anybody. I just need you.
Well, and you're so right about that. I mean, I hear that all the time, and I say to adult children who will tell me that, and what I say to them is, we have to really be aware of the impact of aging on older adults. That if they have hearing loss or if their vision has decreased, but they haven't told anybody, and the primary reason when I talk to older adults about that is that they don't want people to think they're old. They don't want them to think that they are in need, and so they put all of their needs on the shoulders of their adult children, and that's really difficult. I say to my staff and volunteers as well, when we try to offer a recommendation or a referral, is to anticipate that older person saying no, and they'll say, I'm saying no because I want my son or I want my daughter to do that. And so there's a family dynamic there that often needs some intervention, a social worker or an MFT or somebody else that works in aging, a gerontologist, to really help families have a discussion, because so many families suffer, both the adult child who is in the caregiver role, but also that older person as well. And so we try to really kind of start those discussions earlier. It's really tough when you're in the middle of it, but we want to start those discussions earlier so that when your parents are in their 50s or 60s and are still very active and capable, that's when to have those discussions about what's it going to be like when you get older, Dad? What is it going to be like when you... And, of course, nobody wants to have that conversation, but it's such an important one because it's what is really true about life is impermanence. And we really need to have those conversations and go back to those on kind of a regular basis so that everybody's aware of how we're going to respond should Mom have a fall and break her hip or whatever the issue might be. And again, to be involved and be familiar with aging services in your region.
So you say, Mom, what about Dad? What about these dads that are committing suicide? I mean, what about them?
Well, see, that's the other huge element here, which is, if men were born in this country generally, what they have is a very intense relationship with independence and autonomy. And we have to look at that as a potential risk factor when it comes to suicide risk assessment, is that if somebody's value is, I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps, I'm going to take care of it all myself, I can't let people know I'm weak, that's going to really deter the person from getting the help that they might need. And so, again, I think we have to look at, how we talk with older people. And when Dad says, oh, he's okay, don't worry about me, he might not be telling the truth. What he might be experiencing is that I don't want to be a burden on the family. And that's when people talk about feeling like a burden or they talk about not belonging, they're really in a state of thinking about death. And so family members really need to be alert to those kinds of comments and to be alert to that, again, those values where you could see Mom or Dad could really benefit from some help. but they absolutely refuse. And that's when you sometimes need maybe to have the physician have a conversation with that older patient with an adult child there as well, so that people can all get on the same page.
I love that.
I understand when people want and would prefer their adult children to provide all the help, but that's not certainly not sustainable and not always appropriate. We need to make sure that the adult children are aware that they don't have to do that on their own, and it's not a sign of disrespect or lack of love that you're reaching out to other agencies that could be very helpful and very appropriate for the older individual. And again, what I've seen, and the good news on that, is when older people are really brought into that discussion, and if they are competent, meaning that cognitively they're fine, then it's a matter of helping them deal with maybe their fear or embarrassment about what some of their needs are, particularly, again, if they have perceived themselves to be highly autonomous and highly independent.
Yeah.
And again, I think just really looking at things squarely. This is what's going on. Mom and Dad, you are getting older, and we have to talk about that. Somebody's going to be old in this country. We need to be unafraid to say that's okay. We don't want to impoverish the meaning of aging because we're afraid to have that discussion. That we can talk about this, and the sky's not going to fall in.
And you're doing your loved ones a favor when you bring in other people, because sometimes you're frustrated and short with people that you're caring for, and it's beneficial to them. And I guess the other thing I want to say is we need to figure out a way to keep our elderly empowered. They have so much to offer us, and yet we look towards youth for all the answers. And I feel like we need to do a better job at keeping them, in the game and keeping them empowered and going to them for advice and information about life.
See, and I think what we try to do at Institute on Aging is to have a collaboration with the older adult and with the family, so that the older adult isn't sitting there, but everybody is ignoring the older person and talking about what we should do with him or her, rather than engaging that older adult as well to participate actively in decisions about what is going to happen either now in the present or in the future. And what I find is that when one respectfully brings that older person in and anticipates that they may not like this whole discussion, but to give them, the respect and patience to say, I understand how difficult it is to have these discussions, because we're in an ageist society, and no one really wants to say, yes, I need help because something has changed. I'm getting older, and I need to understand what I still can do for myself and what I need assistance from other people. And that could include, again, geriatric service agencies.
What if I feel my family member is at risk for suicide? How would I know? What should I do?
Well, what we have to do, and this is what, again, I talk about connections being so important, you have to be aware of who your parent is or who that older individual relative is that you care about, and actually get to know them and to realize that who they were maybe in their 50s is not who they are today in their 80s. And it's really important to speak directly. And if you see any change in behavior, any change whatsoever, if the person isn't eating well or they're not sleeping well, or they're feeling suspicious of neighbors or whatever, that you really want to, first of all, have a discussion with your older parent and just ask them, is there a reason why you're not sleeping? And to really connect with them and have a discussion about that. And if it seems like the person is maybe experiencing symptoms of depression, then we want to talk to our primary care physician about this. You can call a suicide prevention center, such as our Friendship Line for the Elderly, and our number is 800-971-0016.
We want to thank everyone for listening to this show, and we hope that that you will take action and proaction and think about some of these issues. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
You've been listening to Open to Hope Radio, hosted by Doctors Gloria and Heidi Horsley. Like today's edition, all of our past programs are available on demand at opentohope.com, along with helpful articles, videos, resources, and links to help get you through the toughest time of your life. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and sign up for our monthly newsletter. Again, that's opentohope.com. Check it out today. Then be sure to stop by next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time when we'll be posting another edition of Open to Hope Radio. Remember, others have been where you are. They made it through, and you can too, as long as you're open to hope.